My name is Leigh. I'm 36 years old, and this is the story of how I was humiliated by the man I trusted most, only to rise in a way no one, including myself, ever expected. It was a cool autumn evening in Portland. The kind of day that makes you reach for a sweater and want to slow cook something comforting. I was in the kitchen, gently stirring a pot of tomato sauce, the aroma of garlic and basil wrapping around me like an old friend. This was Dylan's favorite. My fiancé. My partner of 8 years. We were supposed to be married in 23 days. I'd just been thinking about our guest list and whether to switch the cake flavor to the vanilla bean he liked better, when I heard the front door open. He was late again. 4th time that week. But this time, something was different. He didn't call out babe the way he usually did. No kiss on the cheek. Just silence. When I turned around, I saw him standing in the doorway of the kitchen, his expression unreadable, his lips pressed into a thin, pale line. "We need to talk," he said. His voice wasn't angry or sad, it was empty. And that scared me more than anything. I held the kitchen towel in my hand, the one his mother had given us when we got engaged. A silly little thing with pink daisies and the words "a perfect pair" embroidered on it. I remember smiling at it when I opened the gift box, thinking it was the start of something beautiful. That towel, that moment, all of it felt like a lie now. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked, forcing a smile, my voice trembling ever so slightly. "I'm listening." He didn't meet my eyes. I can't go through with the wedding." I stared at him. I thought I had misheard. The sauce simmered behind me, a gentle bubble that suddenly felt like thunder in my ears. "What did you say?" My fingers gripped the towel tighter, my heart pounding. "I can't marry you, Leigh. I'm with someone else." The world tilted. My knees nearly buckled as I reached out to the counter for balance. The air felt heavy, as if the very walls had closed in. "Who?" I asked, though some part of me already knew. Dylan swallowed. He didn't answer. "It's Mia, isn't it?" I whispered. He flinched. That was all the confirmation I needed. Mia. His gym trainer. The same woman he had mentioned casually for months. "She's just helping me get in shape," he'd once said. I'd trusted him. God, I'd trusted him. "She has everything I need," he muttered. I felt my heart twist. What does that mean? She's strong. Attractive. Confident. She makes me feel alive again. And just like that, I felt myself unravel. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't crying. He looked relieved. Like he'd finally taken off a heavy coat he didn't want to wear anymore. "Do you love her?" I asked, my voice breaking. "I don't know," he replied with a shrug that hit me harder than a slap. "I just know I can't do this anymore." The sauce boiled over behind me, spilling onto the stovetop. I didn't move. I didn't care. All I could hear were his words, each one like a dagger in my chest. That night, I collapsed. I don't remember much after he left. I think I lay on the kitchen floor for hours, the burnt scent of sauce in the air, tears soaking my blouse. I was still there the next morning when my mom found me. She cradled me in her arms like I was a child again. "Leigh, baby, how did it come to this?" I couldn't answer. I couldn't even cry anymore. I just stared past her, past the morning light filtering through the window. The dream was over. And I was still breathing. I didn't know how. 3 days later, I began the gut-wrenching process of calling everyone. Canceling the wedding. Canceling the florist, the caterer, the violinist who was supposed to play as I walked down the aisle. My voice was flat, mechanical. "The wedding has been canceled. Thank you for understanding." Each call chipped away at my soul. The reactions were the same. "Oh no, Leigh. Are you okay?" And worse, those who didn't say anything at all. Just long silences that felt like judgment. I could hear what they weren't saying. She must have done something wrong. I packed the wedding gifts with trembling hands. Every towel, every blender, every monogrammed champagne flute, it all became symbols of a life I was no longer going to have. I taped the boxes shut like I was sealing a coffin. On the 5th day, I decided to walk to the corner cafe. I needed to feel normal, even if just for 5 minutes. The barista smiled. "Hey Leigh. Haven't seen you and Dylan lately, he been busy?" I don't remember what I said. I only remember leaving before my coffee was ready, the smell of cinnamon lattes now unbearable. I tried going to the gym. But Mia was there. Laughing. Gorgeous. Her hand brushing some guy's arm. It didn't matter if it wasn't Dylan, her presence alone was too much. I turned and walked out. Every corner of Portland felt tainted. Every bench, every alley, every bakery, it all held echoes of Dylan. Of the life we'd shared. I stopped answering calls. I deleted Instagram. I shut myself inside my house, blinds drawn. Night after night, I lay in bed, the cold sheets a reminder that he was gone. My body wasted away, food became an afterthought. I wasn't living. I was surviving. Barely. One night, my sister April burst through the front door. I'd forgotten to lock it. She took one look at me and said, "No. We are not doing this anymore." She pulled me off the floor, opened the windows, scrubbed the counters, dumped the takeout containers. She forced me into the shower and handed me clean clothes. "We're eating real food tonight," she said. "And tomorrow, you're living again." That night, after dinner, April slid a notebook across the table. "Remember this?" I opened it. My college travel journal. A map dotted with stars: Florence, Kyoto, Santorini. "You always said if you ever lost yourself, you'd find your way using these stars," she whispered. "Go, Leigh. Find yourself." I didn't answer. I just sat there, staring at the map like it was a lifeline. Maybe it was. Later that night, after she left, I stared at the ceiling in the darkness. Then I pulled out my laptop. I had just enough in my savings and the refunded wedding deposits. My finger hovered over the buy button for a one-way ticket to Florence. And then I clicked it. The morning of my flight, Portland was gray and drizzling. Typical. As the taxi pulled away from the house, I didn't look back. That home was a graveyard of dreams I no longer needed. I clutched my old leather journal in one hand and my passport in the other, heart pounding like I was about to do something illegal. Maybe, in a way, I was abandoning my old self without saying goodbye. The flight to Florence was long and uneventful. I didn't sleep. I stared out the window, watching clouds shift like soft bruises across the sky. When the plane landed at Amerigo Vespucci International Airport, the air felt different, warmer, like it didn't care about my broken heart. For the first time in weeks, I took a full breath. Florence greeted me with cobblestone streets, flower-filled balconies, and a language that felt like a song. I checked into a small guesthouse near Piazza della Signoria and let myself dissolve into the city. I wandered the streets with no plan, eating gelato on sidewalks, sipping espresso at tiny cafes, and watching old couples argue with a passion that felt theatrical and alive. The ache in my chest hadn't disappeared, but it no longer felt like it was swallowing me whole. At night, I'd return to my room, open the journal April had given me, and stare at the golden stars on the map. One night, I ran my finger over the word Florence and whispered to myself, "You're here now. So live." It was on the 5th day that I found the postcard. Tucked inside a random page of the journal, there it was, slightly bent, worn at the corners, and written in slanted handwriting I hadn't seen in nearly 20 years. "If you ever come to Italy, find me. Best pizza in Florence, guaranteed. Alex M. Alex Montgomery. My childhood best friend. He'd lived next door in Portland until his family moved to Europe when we were 12. I hadn't thought about him in years. But that card hit me like a lightning bolt from a life before Dylan, before Heartbreak, before everything. I googled his name, expecting nothing, and was stunned to find an official website. Alex was a photographer now, a good one, too. His photos had a quiet depth, as if they listened to you. And he lived in Florence. I didn't overthink it. I sent a message through his contact form. Hi Alex, not sure if you remember me, Leigh, from Portland. I'm in Florence. Would love to see you if you have time. I hit send and immediately regretted it. What if he didn't remember me? What if he was married or busy or had become a self-important artist who wouldn't even reply? But he did. Just 15 minutes later, a message popped up on my phone. Leigh? Oh my God, of course I remember you. I still have that fishing photo from when we were 8. Where are you? I'm coming to get you. I gave him the address of a cafe 2 blocks away. Less than an hour later, I saw him. He was taller, of course. His hair was darker, wavy, and had that effortless just rolled out of bed look photographers always seem to pull off. But his smile? Still the same. It was the kind of smile that made you feel safe. Leigh, he called, arms open wide. I walked into his hug, and just like that, the past felt less painful. We sat outside the cafe, sharing a bottle of Chianti and talking like no time had passed. He told me about his life, how he'd studied art in Berlin, worked for a magazine in Paris, and eventually settled in Florence. It's the one place that always made me feel whole, he said. When I hesitated to talk about why I was there, he didn't push. He just listened. That evening, as the sun dipped low behind the Duomo, he asked, "Want to come with me tomorrow? I've got a shoot in the countryside. Florence looks even more beautiful through a lens." I nodded. I didn't know what was pulling me toward him, nostalgia, maybe. Or maybe it was the way he didn't ask me to be okay. The next morning, we drove through endless olive groves to a sleepy Tuscan village. Alex set up his tripod and camera while I sat on a stone wall, taking it all in. He turned to me, eyes bright. "Leigh, I've got an idea. I'm working on a project called Women Rising, a portrait series of women who've overcome loss, betrayal, anything that broke them, and found their way back. Would you let me photograph you?" I blinked. Me? Why? Because you're living it. I wanted to say no. I didn't want my face, raw and bruised from heartbreak, captured on film. But I also wanted to say yes. Because something inside me, something I thought had died, was whispering that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't broken beyond repair. "Okay," I said softly. "I'll try." We started right there. In a sundress and no makeup, hair wild from the wind, I stood barefoot on a grassy hill. Alex didn't direct much. He just let the camera click as I breathed, as the breeze moved around me, as I let go of everything Dylan ever said I wasn't. At one point, I began to cry. Not from sadness. From release. The tears fell freely, and Alex didn't stop. He just whispered, "This is the real you. Strong. Beautiful." That night, he showed me the pictures. For the first time in weeks, I saw myself. Not a jilted bride. Not a woman Dylan left. But a woman, full, alive, weathered by storms and still standing. A week later, we were in another shoot near the sea in Liguria. And that's where something wild happened. A woman walked by. Stylish. Mid-50s. She paused and stared. "Scusi," she said, "I'm Clara Donati. I design clothes for real women. I'm looking for someone to represent my fall collection. No heavy edits. No supermodels. Just truth. Would you consider it?" I laughed. I thought it was a joke. But Alex leaned toward me and whispered, "She's legit." I gave her my email. What was the worst that could happen? A few days later, I got the contract. Clara's show was intimate but respected. The night I walked that little runway in a simple wine-colored dress, cameras flashed like fireworks. But the applause wasn't for perfection, it was for presence. For honesty. For women like me who had been broken and rebuilt. Later, Alex showed me a photo from that show. I was mid-walk, eyes lifted, the softest smile curling on my lips. "You look like you've come home," he said. I didn't reply. But inside, something fluttered. Maybe I had. After the fashion show, my inbox changed overnight. Invitations, messages, curious inquiries, all asking the same question: who is she? I wasn't sure I had an answer. But Clara Donati's collection, and the rawness I brought to it, struck a chord that rippled across Florence's fashion scene. Suddenly, I was no longer Leigh, the abandoned fiancé. I was Leigh, the face of something real. It still felt surreal. I would wake up in the small sunlit guest house, hear the clinking of espresso cups from the cafe downstairs, and wonder if all of this was a fever dream. But then I'd check my phone, and there it would be, my image on a feature page of a local style blog. Not dolled up, not posed, just me, unfiltered, unguarded. Alex was there through all of it. After the first show, we started working more closely together. He became not just a friend but a gentle anchor, guiding me through photo shoots and interviews, always patient, always listening. In his camera lens, I didn't see shame anymore. I saw a woman in the middle of a transformation. One night, after a shoot in Siena, we sat in the back of his rental van, eating sandwiches from a roadside stall, our legs dangling over the edge. He turned to me, serious. "Leigh, I think you should write." "Write?" "Yes. Your story. Everything. From Dylan to here. You've lived through something women everywhere know too well: betrayal, loss, feeling invisible, and you made it through. People need to hear it." I shook my head. No one wants to hear about someone who got left at the altar. Alex leaned closer. Exactly. That's where they're wrong. That night, I opened my laptop and stared at the blinking cursor on a blank document. It felt terrifying. But I began, slowly, typing the words that had lived unspoken in my chest for months. I once thought my life ended in a kitchen in Portland. The next morning, I got a message from a French beauty brand. They were launching a campaign celebrating the natural beauty of women over 35 and had seen Clara's show. Would I be interested? I thought it was spam. Alex said otherwise. 2 weeks later, I was standing on a balcony in Paris, sunlight kissing my skin as the crew set up reflectors and adjusted the camera. They didn't ask me to cover my freckles. They didn't hide the lines near my eyes. They asked me to be Leigh. And I did. When the campaign launched, it went viral. The comments poured in. "She looks like me. Finally, someone real." I cried reading her story. That was the moment it clicked. My heartbreak wasn't a curse. It was my beginning. From there, Women Rising became more than just Alex's personal project. It became an international movement. Women from around the world sent their photos and stories to Alex's website. Survivors of divorce, illness, abuse, grief. They wanted to be seen too. Wanted someone to say, "You matter." Alex and I spent months traveling, Spain, Greece, the south of France, photographing women who had once been silenced and were now reclaiming their voices. Every time I lifted the camera with him or stood beside another woman during her shoot, I felt my soul stitching itself back together. But something else was happening, too. Late nights editing photos in small cafes. Shared glances during long train rides. That soft pause between laughter and silence when you realize you're not just enjoying someone's company, you're falling in love with it. Alex and I never had to declare it. It just grew. Quietly. Steadily. Like trust. Like sunrise. One afternoon in Provence, As we lay in the grass watching clouds drift across a sapphire sky, Alex rolled onto his side, propped on his elbow, and said, "Leigh, I need to tell you something." I looked over, heart fluttering. "I haven't just been photographing your journey. I've been walking it with you. And somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as the girl next door and started seeing you as the woman I admire. The woman I..." He trailed off, eyes vulnerable. "I know," I whispered. "We didn't need to say the word. Not yet." But in that moment, it was already there. Then one morning, as I sat by the window in our shared apartment in Florence, sipping coffee and watching the street below, my phone buzzed with a notification from an unknown number. I opened it. "Leigh, it's me. Dylan." My breath caught. "I know I have no right. But I saw your picture. You look incredible. I made a mistake. I miss you. Could we talk?" I stared at the screen, waiting for the sting. But it didn't come. Just stillness. I didn't respond. Not right away. Instead, I walked to the balcony, where Alex was trimming a roll of film. I handed him my phone. He read the message, glanced up. "You okay?" "I am," I said quietly. "Really?" That night, I sent Dylan one reply. "Thank you for the message. But I'm not the woman you left anymore. I'm someone better. Goodbye." I never heard back. But I didn't need to. Later that week, Alex's photo exhibit debuted in Paris. The main portrait, displayed in the center of the gallery, was mine. Me in a sunlit field, hair undone, eyes forward, face calm. Not flawless. Not fragile. Just free. The crowd stared at the photo. Then they turned to stare at me. And for once, I didn't shrink under their gaze. I stood tall. Not as a model. Not as the woman Dylan left. But as Leigh. A woman who rose. After the Paris exhibit, everything changed, again. My portrait, the one Alex took that breezy morning in Tuscany with no makeup and tears drying on my cheeks, wasn't just the centerpiece of the gallery. It became the image used in magazines, online articles, even on billboards, the face of real resilience, one headline read. "A woman reborn." I couldn't believe it. I, Leigh, once curled on a cold kitchen floor in Portland with a burned pot of tomato sauce on the stove and a shattered engagement ring in the drawer, had somehow become an emblem of hope. Of strength. Of starting over. But it wasn't the fame that changed me, it was how people responded. The messages came in from everywhere. Women in India, Brazil, the US, South Africa, sharing their stories of betrayal, of being overlooked, abandoned, silenced. They saw me and, somehow, saw themselves. One message I'll never forget came from a woman named Carla in Texas. "My husband left me for a woman 20 years younger. I didn't think I'd survive. Then I saw your photo. You weren't polished, but you were powerful. Thank you for showing me it's possible to feel whole again." I cried when I read that. Not because I was sad, but because it was the first time I truly understood what Alex had meant when he told me the world needed to see me. That it wasn't about being perfect. It was about being honest. As Women Rising expanded, so did the opportunities. A publishing house reached out. They'd seen the interviews, the gallery, the campaign. "We want your story," the editor said. "In your own words." So I wrote. Every night, after photo shoots or press events, I sat at my laptop and poured it all out. The betrayal. The silence. The fear. The way I ran through the streets of Portland, heartbroken and gasping for air. And the way Florence saved me. I titled it Beyond the Darkness, A Woman's Journey. And when I clicked send to the publisher, my hands trembled. Not from fear this time, but from the weight of everything I had carried and finally let go. Alex was with me every step of the way. We'd moved into a modest apartment in Paris's Marais district, filled with second-hand furniture, framed black and white photographs, and potted lavender that reminded me of home. He gave me space when I needed it, encouragement when I doubted myself, and love in the quietest, most sincere ways, like leaving handwritten notes in my journal, or gently brushing my hair behind my ear before a big interview. One night, as we sipped wine on the apartment's small balcony, he looked at me and said, "You know, I never imagined all of this when I saw your message that day." "Neither did I," I whispered. He leaned closer, his voice tender. "I fell in love with you in pieces. First your strength. Then your laughter. Then your courage to break. I didn't just watch you rise, Leigh. I rose with you. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just reached out and held his hand. Because I'd never felt safer than I did in that moment." Weeks later, the book launched in both English and French. The response stunned even the publisher. Pre-orders exploded. Bookstores sold out. Interviews followed. I spoke not as a victim, but as someone who had walked through fire and found her way out. But just when I thought the past had been laid to rest, it found its way back. One evening, as I finished signing books at a literary event in London, a call came in. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. But when I got back to the hotel and played it, my body went cold. It was Dylan. His voice was hesitant, unfamiliar. "Leigh. I saw you on TV. I read the first few chapters of your book." He paused, exhaled. "I know I don't deserve a second of your time. But I needed to say it. I was wrong. About everything. Mia and I didn't last. I thought I wanted something else, but I just ran from what I didn't understand." Silence. Then. "You were more than enough. I just didn't know how to hold it. I hope you're happy. Truly." I deleted the message. Not in anger. Not in spite. But because I didn't need it anymore. I didn't need closure from him. Because I had given it to myself. And that, more than any exhibit, magazine cover, or book deal, was the real victory. That weekend, back in Paris, Alex and I walked the banks of the Seine. The sky was painted with golden streaks of sunset, and the river glistened like melted amber. "I've been thinking," Alex said, nudging me gently with his elbow. "Uh-oh." I laughed. "That's dangerous." He grinned. "We should take Women Rising to Japan next. I know someone in Kyoto who runs a storytelling collective for women rebuilding their lives. I think it's time we kept going. More voices. More faces." I smiled. "I'd like that." And just like that, our next chapter began. The journey wasn't over. Not even close. A month later, I found myself walking beneath cherry blossoms in Kyoto, their soft petals falling like snow around me. Japan was unlike any place I'd ever been. Quiet. Poetic. Every detail felt intentional, the way the tea was poured, the way sandals were placed neatly by the door, the way time itself seemed to bow its head in respect. I couldn't have asked for a better place to continue the Women Rising journey. Alex and I were welcomed by a local women's collective called Hikari, which means light in Japanese. It was founded by a woman named Naomi Sato, a survivor of domestic abuse who had rebuilt her life from scratch. She was elegant, with streaks of silver in her hair and a calmness in her eyes that made you want to tell her your whole life story. She'd read Beyond the Darkness, translated into Japanese, and reached out personally to invite us. "I saw myself in your pain," Naomi told me the day we met. "But also in your strength." Together, we photographed women who had escaped violence, women who had lost children, women who had been left behind by their own families. Some of them wore kimonos, some wore jeans and t-shirts. But every single one stood tall beneath Alex's lens, their silence screaming resilience. One afternoon, Naomi invited us to a traditional tea ceremony at a temple nestled in the mountains outside Kyoto. We climbed stone steps, passing through towering red torii gates, until we reached the wooden hall surrounded by whispering pines. It was there, kneeling on a tatami mat and watching the steam curl from a ceramic tea bowl, that I realized just how far I had come. A year ago, I'd been lying on a kitchen floor in Portland, shattered and alone. Now, I was across the world, surrounded by women who had survived hell and were still choosing to bloom. That night, Alex and I sat beneath a paper lantern in the narrow alley of a Kyoto izakaya, sharing grilled skewers and sipping plum wine. He watched me closely, like he always did when he had something to say but was waiting for the right moment. "You've changed," he finally said. "I know," I replied. "But not in the way people think. You didn't become someone new, you just became more of yourself." I blinked. "How do you always know what to say?" He smiled. "Because I've watched every step. And I'm still watching. Still here." I reached for his hand beneath the table. "So, what comes next?" He tilted his head. "Whatever you want. More stories? A documentary? Or, a quiet life somewhere with lavender on the porch?" I laughed softly. "You remembered the lavender." He leaned in, his voice low. "I remember everything about you." My heart ached, but not with pain. With fullness. With gratitude. Later that night, back in our hotel room, I opened my laptop and reread the email I had received earlier that day. A prestigious New York publishing house had offered a deal for a second book, this time, a collection of stories from the women we had met around the world. Not just me, they wanted to call it. But more importantly, they wanted me to write the introduction. My voice. My lens. I looked at Alex, who was sketching something in his travel journal. "Would you do it with me?" I asked. He looked up. "The book?" "No. Everything. The rest of it. Whatever comes next." He didn't hesitate. "Yes." I closed the laptop and walked toward him, wrapping my arms around his waist from behind. I didn't need grand declarations. I didn't need proposals or rings or promises etched in stone. This, right here, our shared journey, our mutual healing, was the truest love I had ever known. The next morning, I stood on a quiet Kyoto street, looking out at the city's morning bustle, camera slung around my neck, notebook tucked beneath my arm. I didn't recognize the woman in the reflection of the bakery window. She was stronger. Softer, too. Lined by experience, but not defined by pain. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to go back to who I was. I wanted to keep becoming whoever this woman was still growing into. I turned and saw Alex behind me, camera in hand, smiling that half smile that always said "I see you." And this time, I smiled back, not as a model, not as a survivor, but simply as me. Leigh. Alive. Awake. Ready. 2 weeks later, we returned to Paris. I had never planned to live in France. It had always felt like a fantasy, the kind of place you visited once and remembered with a sigh. But now, it felt like home, less because of the city and more because of what I had built there, a life with Alex, a movement that mattered, and a version of myself I had fought tooth and nail to become. Our apartment in the Marais wasn't big, but it didn't need to be. It was filled with sunlight, the scent of strong coffee in the mornings, and dried lavender Alex had brought home from a farmer's market just because it reminded him of me. Women Rising was now a global project. We'd held exhibitions in Tokyo, Madrid, and Cape Town. I'd spoken on stages I once could only dream of, shared rooms with leaders, authors, and activists who used to intimidate me. But the truth? I still felt most at peace behind the scenes, listening, learning, capturing the silent strength in women who thought no one saw them. And then the call came. A curator from the Museum of Contemporary Art in Paris wanted to host a full-scale exhibition of Women Rising. Not just a room, but the main hall. 40-foot walls. Video installations. Live readings. A celebration not just of the art, but of the journey behind it. The night before the event, I couldn't sleep. I stood by the window, staring out at the rooftops of Paris, my reflection faint in the glass. Alex came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," I whispered. He smiled against my hair. "That's how you know it matters." The next evening, as we stepped into the museum, everything blurred for a moment. The soft hum of voices, the flash of cameras, the scent of fresh paint and polished wood, it all swirled around me. But then I looked up. There, hanging from the center wall, was the image that started it all. Me. In that Tuscan field. Hair wild. Eyes clear. Back straight. A woman in motion. It hit me all over again, what I had lived through. Not just the betrayal, but the slow, aching resurrection. The months of silence. The weight of the word failure branded into my skin. The nights I thought I'd never be whole again. And now, strangers stood in awe before a photo of a woman who, not long ago, was broken on a kitchen floor. They weren't applauding the beauty. They were applauding the bravery. I took the stage alongside Alex. My hand trembled slightly in his, but he gave me that grounding squeeze I'd come to rely on. As the crowd quieted, I stepped up to the mic. When my fiancé left me 3 weeks before our wedding, I began, my voice calm. I thought my life was over. But it wasn't. It was just beginning. I ran. I hid. I bled in silence. But then I opened a notebook, bought a one-way ticket, and chose to find out who I was beyond the pain. I paused, scanning the crowd. What you see on these walls isn't perfection. It's not the kind of beauty you can airbrush. What you see is truth. Each face, each story, is proof that even the deepest wounds can heal into strength. We are not what was done to us. We are what we choose to do next. Applause rose, thunderous and warm. I caught sight of my sister April near the front row. She had flown in just for this. Her eyes were full of tears, but her smile was unshakable. She mouthed, "You did it." And I did. The rest of the night passed in a whirl. Journalists asked questions. Survivors hugged me. Artists praised the honesty of the work. One woman, a mother from Marseille, approached me with trembling hands. "I brought my daughter tonight," she said. "She's 16. She saw your photo and whispered, 'That looks like someone I could become.' Thank you for showing her that power can grow from pain." I held her hands for a long time. That moment, more than anything else, is what I'll carry with me. Later that night, Alex and I returned to the apartment, exhausted and exhilarated. He poured 2 glasses of wine, and we sat on the floor beside the open window, our backs against the couch, legs stretched out. "I wish I could show the woman I used to be what tonight would look like," I said quietly. "You just did," Alex replied. "In front of the whole world." I turned to him, heart overflowing. "Do you ever think, if Dylan hadn't left me? You might never have gotten here," he finished, nodding. I smiled. It's wild, isn't it? How something so devastating can lead you exactly where you were meant to go. He leaned closer, brushing his thumb over my cheek. "Leigh, your life didn't begin when Dylan left. It began the moment you stopped asking why and started asking what now." And he was right. That was the question that changed everything. What now? The answer, I was learning, was infinite. A year to the day after Dylan walked into our kitchen and shattered the life I thought I had, I stood on a rooftop in New York City, watching the skyline shimmer like a promise I'd never dared to make to myself before. Below me, the lights of Manhattan blinked like stars, far too many to count. But it wasn't the view that had my heart pounding. It was the letter in my hand. An email, actually, printed out on paper because I wanted to feel it. from one of the largest publishing houses in the US. They were not only finalizing the global release of Beyond the Darkness in multiple languages but also greenlighting a second book, Not Just Me, a collection of stories from the Women Rising Project. And they wanted me to write the foreword. My words. My truth. From a woman left at the altar to the voice of a global movement, how could I even explain that arc to the girl I used to be? Alex came up behind me, his coat draped over my shoulders. Cold, he asked softly. No, I whispered. Just remembering. He smiled, the city's lights reflecting in his eyes. You don't have to go back there anymore, you know. Not unless you want to. But I did want to. Not to wallow in it, but to honor it. Because that heartbreak wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of everything. I turned to him. Do you remember when I told you I didn't think I had anything worth celebrating? He nodded. I was wrong. We had flown to New York for the next Women Rising exhibit, this one hosted in a private gallery in Soho. It was already sold out. Guests had flown in from 5 countries to attend. Survivors. Artists. Celebrities. Strangers who had been touched by the project. But before we stepped inside, I wanted one last breath of the outside world. One last look at how far we'd come. Inside, the gallery buzzed with warmth. The images were framed in clean, gold-edged glass, hanging in perfect rows. Each photo bore the name of a woman and 3 words that defined her story, chosen by her. Amara. Burned. Rebuilt. Alive. Lucia. Widow. Warrior. Free. Me. Leigh. Broken. Rising. Whole. When I saw my name again, this time in that elegant gold typeface beneath my portrait, I didn't flinch. I felt calm. Whole, as I had written. Not because life had tied itself up neatly with a bow. But because I'd taken every jagged edge and shaped it into something beautiful. People approached me that night, strangers with tears in their eyes, women gripping my hand like they'd waited their whole lives to tell someone what they'd survived. A man whose sister had taken her life after a betrayal she never recovered from. She would have loved your book, he said, voice cracking. Thank you for being here, for all of us. And then, just as I was about to step away from the crowd, I saw him. Dylan. Standing across the room. Hesitant. Alone. He looked different. Smaller somehow. Not in size, but in presence. He approached slowly, unsure if he'd be welcomed. Leigh, he said, voice low. Dylan, I replied evenly. He gestured around. This is incredible. You're incredible. I didn't respond. He sighed, rubbed the back of his neck the way he always used to when he was nervous. I'm not here to make things weird. I needed to say I'm sorry. For everything. I studied his face. The apology was real. But I didn't need it. I forgave you a long time ago, I said. But not for you. For me. He nodded, humbled. You're not the same woman I left. I know, I said softly. Thank God. And with that, he turned, disappearing back into the crowd. No drama. No tears. Just closure. The kind that didn't sting. Later, when the event was over and the lights dimmed, Alex and I walked hand in hand through Central Park, our breaths visible in the winter air. I saw Dylan, he said. I know. Are you okay? I nodded. Better than okay. We stopped beneath a street lamp. I turned to him, heart steady and full. I think I want to go home for a while, I said. He raised an eyebrow. Portland? I smiled. Yes. But not because I'm running back. I want to stand on that porch again. Smell the lavender. Sit on those same steps where I cried. I want to say to that woman I used to be, you made it. Look where you are now. He cupped my face gently. I'll go anywhere with you. And he meant it. That spring, we returned to Portland. My mother greeted us with open arms. April burst into tears when she saw me, wrapping me in a hug so tight I thought I'd pop. The house had changed little, but I had. And as I stood on the porch one evening, journal in hand, I felt a breeze drift through the lavender bushes. I whispered, thank you, to the universe, to the silence, to the heartbreak that started it all. Because sometimes, being left behind isn't a punishment. It's an invitation to rise. Beyond the Darkness went on to sell over 1 million copies worldwide. Not Just Me followed, featuring dozens of stories from women rising. Leigh's journey became a documentary, then a global movement. Alex and Leigh continued to travel, speak, and capture the silent strength of women across continents. But no matter where they went, from Tokyo to Morocco, Florence to New York, they always carried with them the first image, a woman in a field, reborn through pain, standing tall in the wind. Sometimes the worst day of your life cracks the shell that was keeping you small. Don't fear the breaking. Embrace who you become after. If Leigh's story moved you, leave a comment below. What would you do if life broke your heart open? Would you have the courage to rise? Subscribe for more true, powerful, emotional stories right here on Revenge Echoes, where stories speak louder than revenge.